Good afternoon, everyone. This is the regularly scheduled Ways and Means Committee meeting. Today's March 24th, and I'm John Quincy, Chair of the committee, and we're joined by Council Members Johnson, Bender, Palmisano, and Blanc. And so we are a committee. I do want to alert that Vice President Glidden is not able to make today's meeting as she is attending other city business out of town. So thank you for that. Before we get into the consent agenda items, I would like to note out to committee members item number 9 on your agenda is the Automon LLC contract. This is actually an item that was previously dealt with, so I'd like to move to remove that from the agenda. All those in approval, please say aye. Aye. Thank you very much. That item carries. So we'll get to the rest of the consent items. The first one is from the City Attorney's Office, a legal settlement with Jeremy Axel versus the city, $271,864.78. There are 2 items related to the Target Center renovation project labor agreement, and the authorizing an RFP be submitted for the construction manager at risk services project. Those 2 action items for that one big project. And then Target Center domestic water supply and sanitary drain pipe replacement bid, accepting the low bid of Northern Air Corporation for the estimated expenditure of $863,522.50. The next item is the appointments to the Minneapolis Television Network Board. We're doing 2 things. There are 4 new positions that we'll be appointing. They are for Nancy Brown, Seth Goodlickson, George Norman, and Luana Whitmore. And we're also extending the mayoral appointment of Catherine Bishop just to sync up with terms to January 15th, 2018. IT department sending forward a couple of items here related to Compass Financial System upgrade, the B2G Now / Ask Reply Inc., extending a contract with that organization for 3 additional years through October 31st, 2017, increasing the contract by $180,000 for a new not to exceed total of $230,000 over the life of the contract. Solid Waste Information Systems executing a 3-year contract with Ardent Technologies, Inc. for support and maintenance and enhancement of the city's SWIS application software in the amount not to exceed $450,000, and including an option to renew up to 2 additional years for that contract. The 8th item is the AmeriCorps Community Technology Empowerment Project, otherwise known as CTEP, authorizing executing an agreement with St. Paul Neighborhood Network for an addition up to $10,000 for 2014-2015 program year using AmeriCorps host site agreement form, and to enable the city to participate in the CTEP program. The 9th item has been deleted from the agenda. Cisco telepresence video conferencing equipment, accepting a gift from Cisco, is the 10th item. The Community Development and Regulatory Services Committee is putting forward 3 items. The first is the 2013 Metropolitan Council Livable Communities Demonstration Account, the LCDA, and Transit-Oriented Development Grant Awards, accepting and appropriating LCDA grants, approving its appropriate budget appropriation increase, and authorizing such agreements to implement those TOD and LCDA grants. The next item under CDRS is the Small Business Revolving Loan Programs, receiving and filing their year-end portfolio report, and authorizing staff to write off an additional loan by Couray LLC of a 2% loan program from several years ago, but that's written off as uncollectible. And then approving up to $300,000 of funding for St. Stephen's Human Services homeless outreach programming, payable from 2 funding sources. One is ESG, and one was originally in the city general fund in 2014 budget operations. Let's see, the next item is coming from the Health, Environment, and Community Engagement Committee. This is for the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention grant application. The original action that was taken in committee was to apply for a 3-year grant with CDC for a not-to-exceed amount of $750,000. But upon notification of additional funding sources for that, we're able to amend that to a revised application of $1,050,000. So that's a good thing to pursue. So we thank you for that from the Health Department. We hope to be accepting that much money, but we'll see what that goes. At least we have to ask for it. Then we go into a series of Transportation and Public Works Committee's actions. This is the beginning of construction season, so we're seeing a lot of the Penn Avenue Phase 2 street reconstruction project, Riverside Extension Street reconstruction project, 5th Street North, 8th Street North, and 5th Street North, and 58th Street East, and the frontage road service on Minnesota 62 Crosstown resurfacing project. And the next item is the Loring Park area and South North Loop area street resurfacing project. And the 2014 Parkway paving and Parkway lighting improvement agreements. Approving the resolution authorizing execution of the agreement with the Park Board for the Parkway paving and lighting improvement projects, authorizing adjusting capital appropriations for Parkway improvement projects, and authorizing finance staff to adjust the Metropolitan Council Regional Grant Fund appropriations between the Parkway paving, Parkway street lighting as needed. Then we have the street construction assessment reductions, authorizing the county auditor to reduce previously levied assessments against Wagner Partners Limited Partnership and Minnetonka Moccasin Company. And then accepting the low responsive bid of Schaefer Contracting for $3,004,000 to complete construction of sidewalks, curb, alley, and drive approaches from the Paving Division's 2014 projects, and accepting the low responsive bid of Dresser Trap Rock, Inc. for an estimated annual expenditure $188,300 to furnish and deliver the gray-black Class A aggregate for the Paving Division. So those are the items on the consent agreement, or on the consent agenda. Any questions or comments on any of those items? Councilmember Yang.
Oops, sorry.
That's all right.
Thank you, Chair Quincy. 2 items. The first item would be item number 4, and the second item would be item number 12. And let me start with item number 4. I actually sat through interviews with the candidates in question here, Nancy Brown, Seth Goodlaxon, George Norman, and Lawana Whitmore. And, you know, I think I missed one of them, but that was my fault entirely. And, you know, I thought it was a great way of seeing the folks who will be serving on the MTN board. It was a good process. And, you know, I mean, we had some good questions. We had some great candidates that came through there, and I really appreciated the folks who actually came through the process. And hopefully, you know, it will be a good partnership between us and MTN, but also just these new board members. You know, my second question is regarding item number 12, which is the write-off of a 2% loan. And I read some of the stuff, but I mean, I wasn't really sure in terms of the write-off, why, I guess, the loan was uncollectible, and also just, I guess, how much of it was a loan, and I mean, goodness, like, how can we prevent this stuff from happening in the future? Because, you know, I imagine it's a pretty decent amount, in the ballpark of about $50,000, and I'm sure, you know, if we can't collect on these folks, I mean, somebody else is not getting those funds in the future. So,
well, thank you for that. Well, thank you, first of all, for the comments on the MTN board. It was a terrific process. But to your question on the 2% loan program write-off, I think, Ms. Guild, if you could kind of comment in general about the the portfolio of all the different programs and where this particular item came up into the discussions.
Great. Thank you, Chair Quincy. And Councilmember Yang, I'd be glad to answer your question. I do want to point out first that the default rate overall for the 2% program, which is our most popular program and the one that is most extensively used, is very, very low. You'll note in the report it's under 3%. It's 2.69, I believe. I actually grabbed the wrong report on my way here today, so if there's any facts in the report, I'll need you all to help me get those right. But that's my recollection. It's definitely under 3. In the case of this particular loan, it was a fairly substantial loan. It was in an area that we will do loans of up to $75,000. It was a business on Franklin Avenue. It was to a restaurant, which restaurants are often risky. And one of the reasons that we as a city step in and participate in these loans is because lots of times banks don't feel comfortable making them, or they don't feel comfortable making the full amount that's needed to get a business up and running. So we're serving as a subordinate lender, taking a portion of that risk to make sure that we have the business activity that we want to see in our city. So we actually have a fair amount of restaurants in our 2% portfolio, and even with that, with those high-risk loans, our default rate is quite low. In the case of that particular business, they were only open for a couple years. The location that they thought and we all thought would work well as a secondary location for a sushi restaurant in the Seward neighborhood proved to just not work well. And so they were out of business within 2 years. And our collateral was the equipment and also then a guarantee by the owner. The equipment was inadequate to fully repay our loan. It paid down some of our loan. A portion of our loan had already been paid off during the course of that 2 years. The equipment paid off another portion of that loan. And then the personal guarantee was rendered moot by the owner declaring bankruptcy. So it's an unfortunate set of circumstances, but taking some of that risk is what we have decided as a city is appropriate to make sure that we are seeing the vibrant, thriving commercial corridors that we want to see in our neighborhoods.
Yeah, thank you for that. Does that answer your question, Councilmember? It does represent a tremendous investment that the city makes to really support our local businesses, small businesses that would have trouble getting financing from its regular course of action. So the millions that have been put out in the 2% loan program since, I think it was 1986 or something, when that started, has been really remarkable in terms of job growth, job retention. But when you're taking any kind of risks, especially with our finance institution partners, it's one of those steps that sometimes the loan doesn't work out. But that's what we're here to do, is to make sure that those small businesses have those opportunities. So were there any other questions or comments on the consent items? Seeing none, I think we'll just see if those meet the committee's pleasure. And all those in favor of those items, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And opposed? Those items carry. We move to our next, our only discussion item of the day, but it's the beginning of a complex process we call the annual budget. So as we look to the end of the 2013 year, we have this great process called budget rollover. And Ms. Christensen, if you'd like to carry us through the process and these recommendations.
Thank you, Chair Quincy and members of the Ways and Means Committee. I'm here today to give you a very brief overview of the annual budget rollover process. This is a relatively routine item. We'll see it on an annual basis. However, I think it's important, as Chair Quincy alluded to kind of make sure that you understand the process of closing out 1 year before we start moving into the next budget year, and it's kind of a never-ending process. So 2013 budget rollover occurs after after we've closed the books for 2013 and we realize where we stand in terms of expenditures related to actuals to budget, as well as having had an opportunity to review any outstanding obligations that departments may have resulting from their year end. So very briefly, what is a rollover? Rollover is the ability to carry forward budget spending authority from one fiscal year to the next. And I'll just refer you to the budget policies or the financial policies in your 2014 adopted budget book on page D16, which is available either online or I believe everybody also received a large paper copy when you joined us. So for rollover criteria, there are very specific circumstances under which we can consider extending budgetary spending authority from one year to the subsequent year. And the first criteria is that it needs to be a valid encumbrance, meaning that we basically need to be owing that money for a reason. We've entered into a contract, we have an order that's in process, something along those lines. It needs to be a one-time expenditure and not a recurring budget item. And that's because recurring budget items are intended to be covered by each annual budget appropriation. So if we start carrying forward dollars from one year to the next, we start stacking up appropriation and end up having more appropriation than is necessary to handle an annual item. It needs to be consistent with the department's business plan and part of their planned expenditures for the year. What we refer to this as preventing the loading dock syndrome, in that at the end of the year, we don't want departments going out and spending money just because they have it, but that the expenditure was something that was intended to be part of their annual operation. And then the department must also have a positive fund position. If they've spent all of their budget dollars and have an obligation, that's a problem. So we don't allow them to carry forward budget spending authority unless they actually have some left over. But leading into the next bullet point, what appropriation is not a mechanism for departments to spend leftover money that they have from the prior year. Again, the authority for them to carry forward the budget appropriation really does need to be linked to these criteria that I just listed for you. Let's see. For 2013 rollover into the 2014 budget, you'll see from the agenda item that was prepared for you and is available on the agenda is total request meeting criteria of about $1.5 million in the general fund and about $7.5 million in other funds, including areas such as the fleet purchasing and in the convention center. Many of these are related to areas where there are capital purchases that may be in process, so contracts outstanding. There was a couple other items that are being brought forward that were previously adopted by the council. They were one for some set aside of funds in the Human Resources Department for some additional training, as well as an action to utilize unspent funds in the individual ward budgets to supplement funding for a legislative information system. So the total funding recommendation for rollover for 13 into 14 is $9.2 million. And those again are for items that both meet the criteria and have previously been approved by council members. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions regarding rollover.
Okay. Thank you for that. Obviously, this is established criteria and very kind of stringent guidelines on what we're asking our departments to do. Could you kind of go over a little bit of the process? You went through the criteria, but from the timing, this isn't a surprise, and the departments responded, and I think it started off when you were doing it in mid-February.
Correct, and actually it starts off towards the end of the prior budget year. We meet with the departments on a regular basis to monitor where their budgetary spending is and also on the revenue side. But as it pertains to rollover, we are meeting with them on a regular basis, and they're communicating with the finance department as to any items that they don't believe they can have completed by the end of the year. So really when we do get to the what I'll call the formal rollover process, when we actively reach out to the departments and seek their requests, we kind of already know what items are outstanding. We're just providing an opportunity for anything that we may have missed during discussion or anything that at the end of the year just wasn't able to get completed. So we do work with the departments throughout the year, And after the books are closed in February, we solicit requests from them, compare it to where their budgeted actuals are, and if they meet the criteria, we bring them forward to you.
Good. Very good. Are there other comments or questions from committee members? Councilmember Yang.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With regards to the issue of rollovers, I mean, as council members, are there red flags that we should be looking for, you know, in terms of, let's say, departments having more, I guess, cash in terms of rollovers in other departments or anything like that that we should be looking at?
Chair Quincy, Councilmember Yang, I don't know that the rollover process per se would signal any red flags or many red flags. I think what we'll find is that because we do have these stringent criteria, there should be some very good planning being done by the departments. I think when we're able to limit the amount of the rollovers, it just indicates that we've been managing well. And in fact, we're compared about $300,000 less in the general fund for rollovers this year than last year. So we are being a little tighter in terms of departmental management. At your next Ways and Means agenda meeting, you will have a presentation of the city's fourth quarter report, which will give you a little more information regarding the year-end performances of all the departments. But remember, rollover is not necessarily a direct correlation of year-end performance. It's the ability to complete a planned item that wasn't able to get done.
Okay, and if I may follow up, Mr. Chair, so your department's keeping an eye on this, then, or you're watching out for these issues, then?
Absolutely. Again, we're meeting with them on a monthly basis, and we'll be bringing forward quarterly reports to you as they're completed.
Yeah, I think that it's a great question, Councilmember Yang. Thanks for bringing that up, because this is really a work product that shows several years in the making as we got to not only the criteria, but it really shows the close relationship, I think, with our finance department, with our department heads, as we're monitoring the performance of a department on specific budget items. But we're really saying, here's what we're spending the money on, and here's the reasons why we need to continue that investment, or something else happens in the department, and they said, here's the things we should be doing with it. It's an ongoing process, so it's not just, the budget itself, a snapshot in time. But it really shows really great financial controls and collaboration between department heads. So these aren't surprises. This is none of these popped up in their budget requests. I'm sure that the finance department wasn't anticipating.
That's correct, Chair Quincy. And to follow up with a couple of your comments, we do work with the departments to look at multi-year spending plans as well. So in the event that we know that a department is going to be experiencing expenditures for large projects over a period of time, we will work with them to parse out the budget over the period in which the expenditures will be made. And I also wanted to give you a little bit of a forward look on the calendar that we will be coming back to you in future meetings to provide a little more information regarding the various components of the city's budget and how we go about planning for these expenditures, as well as looking at the revenues that fund them. So there will be more information coming forward with the next agenda and several scheduled presentations.
Terrific. Thank you for that. There's going to be 6 people that are anxious to hear that. We hope the rest of the city is interested as well. So, good. No additional comments or questions. So I'd like to move this item for approval, and so we can begin the work of the 2015 budget. We look forward to that presentations and that series of presentations. So on this item and the associated actions with changing the appropriations, and let's see what else we have to do with that. Allocation and then changing the budget. So yes, all those in favor of that item as presented by staff, please say aye. Aye. And opposed? That item carries. Thank you very much. I think that concludes our business for the day, so this meeting is adjourned.